Welcome everybody to our webinar on emotional intelligence. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Virginia Rubain, and joining me is Dr. Claudina Cayetano, and we will be presenting to you today. So I'm going to share my screen, just practice, so hopefully it works. Let's see here. All righty, and I hope everybody can see.
Yes.
Come on, let's do this. All right, so we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence and controlling our thoughts and behaviors. And we decided to do this webinar on the suggestion of our nursing director, Mrs. Perla Sylvester Thomas, because we recognize that the more emotionally intelligent people are, the better they work together as a team. And so I just want to share with you some factors and tips to improve your emotional IQ. So we're going to be learning what emotional intelligence is, why is it important, and how do we achieve it. So emotional intelligence refers to the ability to identify and manage one's own emotions as well as the emotions of others. For us in the healthcare service area, we're always managing the emotions of others, whether you're directly involved in mental health or not. Emotional intelligence is a learnable, measurable, scientifically validated skill set that fuels better effectiveness, relationships, well-being, and quality of life for adults and children. An emotionally intelligent thing to do when you're driving on the road, you don't stop abruptly in front of all the other drivers behind of you because you can cause an accident. But sometimes we're so absorbed in what's happening in our own world that we don't stop to think how our actions impact the emotions of other people. So we want to increase having emotional awareness and the ability to harness emotions and apply them to things like problem solving. You know, we see a lot of bumper stickers that say, "What would Jesus do?" Well, he was the king of empathy. He was the king of understanding what other people thought and how they felt. And so that's why, we say stop and think about what Jesus would do. That's just a funny way of saying stop and empathize with the people that you're interacting with. Being able to identify visual cues, nonverbal behaviors, and body language that help us to communicate clearly is so important. For those clinicians online, we know when we have sessions with persons, therapeutic sessions, their facial expressions, their tone of voice, what they do with their hands and their feet give us valuable information that lets us know what's going on with them. So it is hugely important because we live on a spinning ball with about 7 million other people, and social relationships are so important. When we don't have good social relationships, we have more conflict. What we don't need on this little spinning ball is more conflict. Being smart intellectually, having a high IQ, does not guarantee you a successful life. You could be academically brilliant and not have any social skills at all. Emotional intelligence will allow you to communicate more effectively. And a lot gets lost in translation. We have people from all over the world with different languages, different dialects, different cultural norms and understanding. And when we're able to meet people where they are, we're better able to communicate with them. A high emotional intelligence will help you to build relationships, reduce team stress, diffuse conflict, and improve job satisfaction. And in general, you'll just be happier and be better health. You'll be healthier and you'll have a better well-being. So factors that we're going to be looking at for emotional intelligence is empathy, as I said before, social skills, self-awareness, self-regulation, which is a must, and motivation. So self-awareness is just what it says it is, just being aware of self, being aware of your own feelings, in the Avengers, somebody asked the Incredible Hulk what was his secret for controlling the Hulk, and he said his secret is, I'm always angry. So Dr. Banner was very, very aware of his own feelings. He had to be, because if they got out of control, then he would, turn into a rageaholic and smash. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses. I just told this story the other day. My team and I went paintballing, and I turned to the nurse manager and I said to him, I don't think I'm going to do very well on this exercise. And he said, oh, you'll be fine. And then one of my staff shot me and I lost my mind. So I know one of my strengths is admitting to my weakness. And so I readily tell people where my shortcomings are. Being aware of how your emotions and actions affect others. Like the example with traffic. You don't live on a planet by yourself. You're not in a bubble all alone. Everything that you do has a ripple effect, and being aware of how those ripple effects affect others is so important. If you find it difficult to really come into contact with your thoughts and your feelings, one of the great things that you can do is keep a diary. You can keep a diary and you can record exactly what's going on for you. For the tech savvy listeners, there are all sorts of apps that you can record how you're feeling on a day-to-day. And then at the end of the week, it provides you with a graph to show you your highs and your lows. So there's so many tools available for us to track our thoughts and our feelings. Slow down. There's a gajillion things that distract us on a daily basis. I believe multitasking is something sent from the devil, because you're not able to sit one mindfully in the moment and participate in what you're doing. And I think as a result of that, people fly through their thoughts, fly through their emotions, and they're unable to process what led to what. Okay? When you slow down, this will help you prevent any outbursts or unwarranted arguments, because you have the time to think clearly. So use PAC before you act. Pause, acknowledge your thoughts, no matter how ratchet they are, and clear your mind. Clear your mind. Let go of whatever the negative thoughts you may be having. Clear your mind and allow positive solutions to enter into your mind. All right? So continue with self-awareness. Understand what motivates you. I really understood today, and for BVI HSA staff, they will understand. I really understand that money really motivates me to work. I mean, I feel good helping people and all that good stuff, but paying my bills apparently is one of the biggest things that motivates me. And I'm not going to lose focus on that. So never lose focus of what motivated you in the beginning. When you decided to learn Spanish, the motivation was to be able to converse fluently with other Spanish speakers. Yes, it gets hard. Yes, it gets confusing. But never lose focus of what prompted you to start in the beginning. Keep the end goal in mind, that you'll become fluent in Spanish. This should guide your behavior and responses. So the days when you really don't feel like practicing, you keep that end goal in mind and you tell yourself, if I keep going, if I just do another lesson, I'll get closer and closer to my goal. In each situation you find yourself in, always ask these 3 questions. What am I feeling? What options do I have that are legal? And what do I truly want? Because sometimes we don't even know the answer to that. Now there's self-regulation and self-management, and this is so important. We see toddlers have meltdowns all the time, and we tell ourselves, they're 2, they're 3, but when you see somebody 40 years old having a meltdown, it's just not as cute, because maybe they may not have those chubby cheeks. When we regulate ourselves, we take responsibility of our own behavior, okay? And that means controlling emotional outbursts. Emotional outbursts can be very gratifying in that instant, because you're able to release a lot of steam, but they're going to be long-term consequences. So rather than having an emotional outburst, Try staying in control and thinking of strategies and solutions that allow you to express your feelings appropriately. Transform your emotions with your physical body. So it's a well-known fact that thoughts influence feelings and our feelings influence our actions. What people don't really understand and know is that sometimes our actions can influence our thoughts and feelings. So when you feel yourself on the verge of an emotional outburst, taking deep breaths from your diaphragm, slowing down your heart rate, taking a long walk, even washing your face, going to the bathroom and splashing some water on your face to get that physiological feeling of whatever emotion it is that you're experiencing to reduce so that you can think more clearly. So another important aspect of self-regulation is knowing your values. You know, I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter what you subscribe to. It could be Jesus Christ, Lord of the universe, or Mickey Mouse, Lord of Disney. Your value system has to be informed by some kind of philosophy or belief. I think people often get into trouble when they don't have a clear understanding of what their values are. So then what's governing your motivation? What's governing your behavior? What is your code of ethics? For me, honesty is the best policy. I will die on my sword telling the truth. So as long as I am being honest, I know I'm keeping within my value system. What else are your code of ethics? We have a responsibility to do no harm. Some people may believe I am my brother's keeper. Know the areas where you will not compromise. I will not tell a lie, not even to save my own life. I'm not doing it, okay? Call emotions by name. And having a very in-depth, wide emotional vocabulary helps you to understand yourself even better. So there's anger, but there's so many nuances of anger. There's frustration, there's disappointment, which could border on sadness. There's exasperation, which is another milder form of anger. So when you're able to specifically name what it is that you're feeling, you're better able to understand yourself. And acknowledging your feelings allows you to better control your actions. Some people feel very vulnerable acknowledging their feelings, but it's very empowering to do so. Self-regulation also means holding yourself accountable. Man, learn to admit when you're wrong. That's also very freeing and liberating, because when you're wrong and you're trying to be strong, it is very taxing psychologically because you're escalating your commitment to something that has already failed. And the psychological and physical energy that you're putting into escalating that commitment could be used for something else more productive if you were just to admit that you were wrong. Don't blame others. You know what? My mother always said, you were born by yourself, you're going to die by yourself. Be able to take responsibility for the choices that you've made, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. And more importantly, learn from your mistakes. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If you make a mistake, sit down, analyze it, and figure out what can I do differently to avoid the same error. Motivation. Motivation is our inner drive to achieve and improve our commitment to our goals. What is your final destination? What is your end game? Clearly, I like Avengers. Are we going to destroy Thanos and bring back all the people that were snapped? Know exactly what you want to do in this life. Know exactly what you want to contribute to society. Usually, young people developmentally are very ambivalent about knowing exactly what they want to do. But by the time you hit your 30s, your 40s, you pretty much know what you want to do and you're doing it. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, what will be your legacy? When we think back at a life well lived, What will we say is your contribution to this life? Be hopeful, find something good. Try to find at least one good thing during difficult situations, like when Maria destroyed my house. It wasn't completed, but the storm coming, I guess the bright side was I got the money to finish the house. So that was a bright thing, even though it was a 2 category 5 catastrophic storms. Always believe that there are other possibilities, even if you can't see them. For those of you who believe in Christianity, you know, the Bible tells us walk by faith, not by sight. Yeah. Positive thinking. Maintain a positive and optimistic mindset, even when it seems almost impossible. And that takes us into the power of yet. Things may not be going well yet. This isn't better yet. I'm no good at this yet. This doesn't make sense yet. When you use the word yet, it creates a mindset of endless possibilities, and you have the hope and the motivation to keep moving forward. Now, empathy. Empathy is our ability to understand other people's emotions. For some of us, we're born empathic and we're like sponges. We absorb the emotions of others. And for the rest of us, sometimes understanding the emotions of others is like reading Mandarin Chinese. You just don't get it. But understanding that everyone has their own fears, triggers, and pleasurable moments allows us to respond in emotionally appropriate ways. Listening is so important. Try to understand what the other person is saying. Even though it may not make sense to you, give them the respect to articulate what's going on with them. Don't interrupt them, don't distract them, and try to keep your preconceptions to yourself. Put yourself in the shoes of the other person. I think this is the biggest thing that's lacking in the 21st century, or maybe not. There's like two extremes. We put ourselves so much in the shoes of other people that we take people out of their own shoes, or we don't get in the shoes at all. There has to be a happy medium. And when you try to understand somebody's perspective or problem by asking yourself, how would I feel if this were happening to me? What thoughts do I would have if this were happening to me? Take time to look at the situation from the other person's perspective and acknowledge their feelings. That's the humanistic thing to do. And now social skills, which varies from culture to culture, refer to the skills needed to handle and influence other people's emotions effectively. It plays a vital part in every aspect of our lives, from our work life to our romantic life, and it varies based on culture. And the BVI is a melting pot of over 100 different cultures. So people's social skills are going to differ based on where they originated from. Learn conflict resolution. So not because you and I don't have the same social skills and social expectations means that we have to be in conflict all the time. We have to find the common ground and the happy medium between team members, customers, co-workers, colleagues, administration, etc., etc. Okay. One of the ways that you can improve your social skills is by improving your communication skills, knowing when to listen and when to speak. Communication takes practice. If you're not talking to anybody, you're not practicing communication. So you have to actually get out there and interact with people in order to improve your listening and speaking skills. For our managers out there, you have to lead by example. It's not do what I say, not what I do. Our staff is looking at us, and the same expectations that we place on them, they expect us to implement with ourselves and exhibit. You have to be able to share the goal and the vision with others, especially when you're working in a team. So if you're unable to share the vision and goals with others because you can't communicate, trust me, you're gonna have a lot more conflict. So building bonds, also known as rapport, is your ability to build and maintain relationships. Some people struggle with this, not because they don't have any social skills, but because they lack consistency. So you can't take relationships and put them in a corner and think that they're going to manage themselves. It requires you to engage in active participation, especially in the workplace. Good morning, good afternoon. How are you doing today? Um, was this a productive meeting for you? Is there anything I can do to help you be more effective? I'm here and willing to listen to your concerns. Building rapport helps you to develop healthy and meaningful connection with others. And for the managers out there, it makes your staff more comfortable coming and talking with you. Collaboration and cooperation, being able to work well with others. I find in this environment, one of the biggest reasons that we tend to have difficulty collaborating and cooperating is because we have different end games. So for me, work is what I do to earn a living. It is not who I am. But for other people, work is who they are, and it also helps them to earn a living. And when we have those two very different perspectives, it's going to create hiccups in collaboration and cooperation. And this is why building rapport and communication is so important, so everybody can be on the same page. When we're all on the same page and we all understand what we're working toward, we collaborate and cooperate better. Value people as much as they value the task at hand. I absolutely adore my team, even though sometimes I tell them I hate them. I'm sorry, I do love you. And I value them much more than the task at hand. So I will never put them in harm's way. I will never allow anybody to abuse them or ill treat them. And I will fight to the death for them because I value them more than the task at hand. Create an environment that is welcoming and allows everyone to contribute. Now, we understand that ultimately there's a hierarchy and a chain of command, and that chain of command ultimately has the final say. But I think it's very important that everybody has an opportunity to express their thoughts, their ideas, their creative contributions. As long as people understand that not because you made a suggestion means that it will be implemented. A suggestion is just that, an idea to be considered. So when facing adversity, Martin Seligman, braces, who's a psychologist and founder of positive psychology, he advocates the positive threes: personalization, permanence, and pervasiveness. And the 3 Ps determine how well we deal with adversity. So there's the optimistic thinking and the pessimistic thinking. So the optimist goes through their 3 Ps like this. They realize that outside factors have and can cause a bad situation, and it allows them to reduce blame and criticism that they put on themselves. They know that setbacks are temporary, and that improves their ability to accept and adapt for the future. And they understand that a bad situation is isolated in nature and does not apply across all areas of your life. Well, the pessimist thinks the exact opposite. They think that everything that happens has something to do with them. And when you internalize everything that may not have anything to do with you at all, it's really hard to come up with solutions outside of yourself if you think it is all about you. And when you think that a bad situation is forever, then there's no reason to hope. Hope as a concept is gone. So these persons tend to have very difficulty adapting to the future. They get stuck because, oh, the world is ending. Kind of like Chicken Little. Chicken Little kept saying the sky was falling, and dude was just stuck on that loop. And then pervasiveness. People who are pessimistic in their thinking think that if something bad happens at work, then the whole other 10 domains of their life is just trash. No, that's not how it works, right? So we have optimistic thinking and we have pessimistic thinking. And all of this is based on our choices. All right, so 3 questions to ask yourself when we're thinking about this 3 Ps. Am I thinking the situation is personal? Now I want to pause there because sometimes the situations are personal based on your lack of skill. And one of the things that I say to my clients all the time is if you find yourself in a scenario more than 1, 2, 3 times, I think you got to take a step back and recognize that maybe you're the common denominator, and maybe there's something that you're doing that's contributing to similar outcomes in each situation. So while we don't encourage you to internalize the sky falling, if you're shooting at the sky consistently and poking holes in it and it's falling down, or maybe it is you. Am I thinking this is permanent? Nothing in this life is permanent. Nothing in this life is permanent. As my mother would say, this too shall pass. So if you're thinking that this is permanent, what evidence or data do you have to substantiate or support that top thought process? And am I feeling this is pervasive? If I feel like all areas of my life are just negatively impacted by what's going on, maybe then I need to talk to somebody because I don't see how that's necessarily possible. So these 3 questions are very important to ask yourself, especially when you're in the work environment. So when we have good emotional intelligence, we have increased team performance, we have decreased occupational stress, we are able to improve our decision making, we become better as leaders, we increase our personal well-being, and we reduce staff turnover. And we have some references there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so Dr. Cayetano can share hers. Doc, you ready?
Thank you. Perhaps is we have 2:35. Our plan is for us to is an hour, so we don't want to cause too much stress to have people. So let me just check if there's any questions here. Okay, a question from Mr. Percy is, please will the slide presentation be shared with participants? We tend to, Dr. Ruben, before I announce it, this is a collaboration, so I want to make sure I get our presenter.
Yes, absolutely. The slides will be shared with participants.
Thank you, Dr. Ruben. So yes, it will be shared. One of the things, as Dr. When you talk about collaboration, it's a collaboration between the Ministry of Health, BVI, and Health Services and PAHO. So it is definitely important to get our presenters' feedback. And you see how there is in the chat placed by Ms. Toscano, which is the campaign Bounce Back Stronger Together. This is the project of, that because of this project, that's what allows us to be able to have this webinar with you all. So I'm so pleased to see that we have 27 people who have connected to today's webinar. Please go check the website. And if there's any concerns, we also have some of the other previous webinars. Perhaps not all the recordings are going to be there, but we try our best to keep that information. And thanks for asking if this slide presentation will be available. The reason why this is relevant, I always tell people, and I like what Dr. Amin was saying about the child that will make, if they put a tantrum and we say, oh, that's okay. But it's the same thing, like, we learn by repetition. We learn by seeing things over and over. And I think the idea that, thanks for accepting that you can share your presentation. I mean, we will be able to share the presentation with you so that you have the opportunity to learn more about working with emotional intelligence. My presentation, so if there's no other question, I was hoping to do something kind of to complement what Dr. Ruben has said, because the idea here is to see, and I'm about to share my screen. You probably can see it now. Yeah, okay. I'll just, so the idea is for us to, I will just do a presenter mode. No, let me do it. It's a bit slow right now. So let me just try to do it differently. Okay, now you can see that one. Okay. So it's just a complement to what was said before. There is a publication from WHO doing what matters in times of stress. So some of you probably heard that there's a publication that is very, we have it in different languages. It's a very popular publication on doing what matters in times of stress. It's an illustrated guide. And it also provides some practical skills to help people to be able to cope with adversity. So I think this is a good guide that you may want to, and I will present, is to complement this presentation. Because part of understanding of, when we're talking about emotional intelligence, it's about understanding yourself, and it has been well presented and that by what Dr. Ruben mentioned. And she also talked about the values, and I think this is so relevant, that when we are not aware of our own values in doing the work that we're doing, that tends to color the way how we respond to situation, how we respond to stress. So like, it's always important to ask ourselves, what are our values in doing this work? Well, it could be that, yeah, I could see that, you want to do well, or you didn't get another job and you want to be able to pay your bills, and all of those things complement, and they're important, but important to keep that in mind, because when the way how you're responding to stress, if you're not aware of your values, that takes you away from that. So it is so relevant. In this publication, you'll be able to see, they will walk you through those important values. The other thing that is relevant is that this was a research that was done prior to the pandemic. So stress and burnout is not new to healthcare providers. People sometimes have to do shifts like from 7 to 7, or sometimes they have to double shift and they have to go home and still have another shift, So burnout is not new. Before the pandemic, we talking almost 50%. But what happens after, this is a US data, this is not a BVI data. And we have some research from another project that we're working on called Heroes, which is for the region. So, but this one is strictly for the US, which I don't think is that different from other countries. But look at what happened during the pandemic. It's almost 80%. So it's like, 2 people every 10 has reached, have problems. So 76% is, run to 80%. It is very, very high. And that has to do with also the lack of awareness, or sometimes the lack of understanding what that could be. It's easy for us to say, well, I'm just stressed. And the line is a blurred line. You could easily move, because if it's a stress, if you notice here, what happens when people are burnout, clearly they're not as efficient as they want to. They become emotionally distant, they become demotivation, demoralized, disengaged. And then this is why your values become relevant. What it is that is happening, why you're feeling this way. And then of course, exhaustion, right? Now, some people say, I need to be a little bit stressed so I can function okay. Maybe that could be, you want to be able to look at it from that, that peak in terms of, you want to stay between this green and yellow, and orange. Once you go into the red, there is a problem there. So this is what we want to avoid. We want to be able to, when you think of the bell curve, think of staying between yellow. You also don't want to be too green, because then, what's the point? You want to be able to stay, as I say, between the yellow and orange, but not quite going into red. So this is about the, this publication, Doing What Matters in Times of Stress, guides you through some of these things that we mentioned. They have different, I really like the presentation from Dr. Ruben about the 3 Ps, you know. So you always have something that you can go back to help you to stay well, to stay grounded. And again, this is another reference that you can look. You will see here our PAHO website, where there is so many publication information. And as mentioned before, you will also have opportunity. There is also the website for BVI, where you can see some of the previous webinars and some of the information that we have in order for people to be able. So that's it. This was a very short presentation, as I say, just to complement the one from Dr. Ruben, which is a fabulous presentation. I think we still have 15 minutes, so we can probably stop here. And if you have any questions, you can raise your hand, and then Mr. Scano can help us to unmute you if you wanted to speak, or in the question and answer, you can actually write your question in the Q&A section. Thank you. Mr. Scano, I think is there anyone with their hand?
No, Claudina.
No?
We have a question. I don't know if you answered about, oh yeah, about the presentation.
Yeah, I answered that
That's
one.
the only question that we have in the chat. I don't see anyone.
The difficulty, thank you. Yeah, I answered that one. Dr. Ruben said that she would do that. So as soon as normally what we do, we send the recording, we send the presentation in PDF format. So we'll be able to do that. I think the difficulty with the Zoom one is that we can't see people. And I understand from working with some of the colleagues in BVI, they enjoy face-to-face interaction. And from this Zoom, I don't think you can have access to open your mic or your camera. Dr. Ruben, anything else you want to add to the discussion?
Well, for our participants, if you have any real life questions or conflicts, you have 2 experts here sitting right now that you'd like to get some feedback on, especially as it relates to the work environment. Now would be your time to ask. You know, we had a very stressful weekend. We had a very stressful weekend because there was a glitch in the system and we were not remunerated when we thought we were going to get paid. And I really had to use my emotional intelligence there. I had to use my emotional intelligence because I wanted to have some emotional outbursts. I thought I had a lot of negative thinking, but you know, May is Mental Health Month, and Mental Health America has like this wonderful toolkit called Tools to Thrive. And I had to radically accept that I had no control over the situation. And then I had to save myself from thinking traps, because I was in a lot of thinking traps this weekend. So, you know, if anybody wants to talk about the stress and the frustration, you know, the doctors are in, we're here to help.
While we're waiting to get some feedback, you suggested that maybe we can also have a conversation while we're waiting for some colleagues. From your perspective, working at the country level, you suggested we do this topic, which I think is a fascinating topic, I know. Do you see that this is something that you find people are not necessarily practicing, or they're practicing, or they forget? What would be your thought? Because I think it is definitely important to work with emotional intelligence. We used to talk about, you know, IQ, or now we talk about EQ. So I think that's the thing. How do we continue advocating for people to get this, build these skills? What do you think? What's your thoughts on that?
I think we have to start from the primary school level. I think we have to. When I was in elementary school, we learned about communication, and we had something called the communication showcase, and we actually went through learning how to ask questions and make statements. And I think we've become so advanced technologically that we've left the basics behind. So if you, and I'm not ragging on millennials or Gen Zers, but if you look at their ability to interact face to face with each other versus Generation X or the baby boomers or the greatest generation that ever lived, we see a significant significant disparity.
Mhm.
And I see a lot of memes where people say, text me, don't call me. People have actually become uncomfortable with communication, with direct communication. I know there are some studies in Japan, coming out of Japan. I'm not quite sure who conducted them, but they've been following the disparity between males and females. And Japan is considered to be one of the most technologically advanced countries in the world, but the people are not interacting. So I think we need to go back to basics. And I think we need to teach the components of emotional intelligence as life skills. We hope that parents would be teaching their children these things, but parents are busy surviving, you know? And in 2021, if you have more than one child, you have two Mount Everest, you know what I'm saying? So I think that we need to formalize this instruction in our primary and secondary school systems.
Thank you. We do have another question, but I definitely like what you're saying. We teach our kids, and we do learn how to brush our teeth, right? They
Yes.
tell you how to do it. You have to do it now. Either you're using, well, as a child, you can use an electronic toothbrush. As you get older, when you go to your dentist, they teach you, okay, if you're going to use an electronic toothbrush, this is how you do it. So there's time to teach people how, like physical activities, in terms of how many hours you should take time to do physical activities, how many minutes. But I totally agree with you that we don't really take time to teach people about emotional intelligence. So there is this challenge that people don't know how to modulate their emotions. They can learn how to do physical, as I said, brush their hair, do their teeth, but there's no time to learn about protecting your mental health, working in a situation where you become emotionally intelligent. That is not happening. So I was very curious. That's why I was asking you why you felt that we should do this webinar, because I thought this is so key that we are not learning what to do. We just tend to respond, but necessarily without understanding what it means to respond. So the question that we have here is, do you have any tips in which a person who is afraid of vulnerability can use to help build more deeper bonds?
That's a wonderful question.
One, two.
That's a wonderful question.
Afraid
So
of vulnerability. I like how they post that one. Afraid of vulnerability, can use to build more deeper bonds.
well, I think most of the things that we're afraid of exist in our minds. I see fear and disappointment as two interrelated emotions. And so disappointment is the emotion what we experience when our expectations are not congruent with reality. So very often we become vulnerable to people that we have expectations of them that they can't possibly fulfill because of their life circumstances, their lack of skills, whatever mental health issues they may be having themselves. I think that when we're selecting people to be vulnerable to, we have to be very cognizant of whether or not their values match our values. I think that's important, that we have to have compatible value systems. This person has demonstrated consistently through word and deed that they are who they say they are, because sometimes people pretend. I think that we have to understand our own needs and try to meet those needs for ourselves before we expect other people to meet those needs. So I think when we're afraid of being vulnerable, it's because we don't really trust ourselves to select people based on the criteria that I just mentioned into our lives. And so when persons who don't meet the criteria come into our lives, they disappoint us. And disappointment, as you know, is a precursor to sadness and hopelessness. And then that's the precursor to depression. So we don't want to feel sadness and hopelessness. We don't want to be depressed. And so our solution is, oh, I'm just not going to interact and be vulnerable with anybody. No, find somebody who mirrors your value system, vet them, make sure they are who they say they are, and then make sure that your expectations are appropriate based on who they are and what they can do.
I totally agree. I hope our attendee find it relevant. And I like the focus that you focus on yourself, because if you're afraid, the fear of being vulnerable has a lot to do with you as the individual. So thank you, Dr. Ruben. The other thing that I also find interesting is the issue of vulnerability. It varies between women and men, just like the issue of burnout. You find that high percent of healthcare providers, the highest percentage of healthcare providers, especially when it comes to nursing, more female than male, right? So you also find that the gender here has a lot to do how we express stress and who becomes more burnout. But the question I want to focus on, because of the time, we have 5 more minutes. I like this time from Mr. Percival. He's saying, what are some of the tools as a parent can use to teach emotional intelligence, especially for a child who is very emotional and cannot express himself, herself with their words?
Okay. There are lots of tools on the market that you can use. One of the things that we give out at Community Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services is we give parents an emotion magnet for their fridge. So it doesn't list every emotion in the world, but it has a wide enough variety. And we ask parents to put it on the fridge at a level that their child can reach. And then there's this little square, and the child can move the square to the face that best represents how they're feeling. We also have a game that we play with our kids called the coping skills game. And that game, it's a board game, and so it's very interactive and it's a lot of fun. And it gives them scenarios where they have to identify feelings and put names to those feelings. There's a lot of books on the market that talks about feelings. I would inundate my emotional child with that and have them read. And then I would teach them the PAC method. Pause, acknowledge, and then clear your mind. And the earlier you teach them these techniques, breathe deeply, slow down your heart rate so that you can speak slowly and clearly so I can understand. One of the things that I do with my nieces when they're wigging out is I just let them. I let them, and periodically I'll say, are you finished now? And they'll say no, and I'll continue to let them wig out. I did this with my godson too. It's very effective. And they would continue to have whatever emotion. And then when they were finished, they'd come over and say, Auntie, I'm finished now. And I say, are you ready to talk about what happened? And we would sit down and have a chat. And then I would try to help them name their feelings.
Thank you. That's a I'm sure you answered very well. What I wanted to add to that is you also serve as a mirror. So how you modulate, how you work with your emotion has a lot to do. Your children are learning from you. They're watching, they're listening. They're like a little sponge. absorbing everything. So I think it's so important that we also know how do we deal with that. So the issue of, and I brought that part because, you know, we teach kids about good touch and bad touch so that they know what that is. So we also teach them about good emotions, you know, these emotions of happiness, of, you know, you get upset or you get frustrated. I like that you have those magnets that if our participants want to go to the clinic and pick up the magnets, I'm not in BVI, but I'm just doing ads. Those are very important. Kids learn by seeing, by being visuals, and then you also by doing that, so they know what it's like to stay calm and be able to pause and, you know, before moving. It's 2:58. We're doing very well with time. This has been a very interactive and very interesting and practical session. I do not see any person raising their hand. So no.
I would like to take this time while Dr. Cayetano is looking for questions to thank Ms. Kimberly Parker Fraser for her usual excellent work. She is the genius behind all of my PowerPoint presentations. I could not do what I do without her. So thank you, Kimmy.
Oh, that's very nice of you. Is she with us?
She should be.
Okay. Yeah, gratitude. Okay, well, we also would have not been able to have this webinar, Dr. Ruben, without your kindness to do the presentation and use your personal experiences to be able to give some more interest, you know, because it's always sometimes important. People remember the examples and the fact that you can use that part of vulnerability, use yourself to show, to be vulnerable of the situation with the salary. That's
yeah. It's very vulnerable.
Exactly. So you know, and I think people will remember these things. Yes, it happens. It's real. But yet, you know, you have a choice how you're going to react to the situation. It's not permanent. It's one of the P, you know, it's not permanent.
That's
so
right.
Thank you very much. We are going to close here. We appreciate that you took the hour from your busy schedule to be with us. I also want to thank, you know, I know Marta left us, but I also want to thank her and Natalia for supporting this. I don't know if Dr. Ruben, is Dr. Samuels with us? Do you know?
I am not sure. Let's look and see.
Because she was trying to connect. She had a difficulty with the link.
Oh, I don't see her here now.
Okay. Okay, just in case you wanted to say something. But thank you very much. This has been...
Thank you. Thank you to all our attendees. We'll see you at our next presentation.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Dr. Ruben. Bye.